Now the Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 10th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus spoke to his disciples, saying, "A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the Father. And even the hairs on your head are all counted. So, do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
How about those words from Jesus? I don't know, maybe it's because I'm still holding on to memories from Synod Assembly a couple weeks ago, but all I hear in this reading this morning is fear. As you've heard reported and as you see on the insert in your bulletin, that's the theme around which the Synod Assembly was held. The theme that brought us together and made us share our fears that we have as a church body and how we can address them. It was great conversation, obviously, since it's still churning in my little brain. But it's also a very important conversation because fear is such a part of this world in which we live. And it's always been a part of this world. But it's important for us to have these open and frank conversations about these fears that we have. Now, while fear can and has caused us to do some very extreme and unthinkable things, there are times where fear can be used for good. One thing that comes to mind is how we use fear to teach things that are important to know, especially to children. You know, until they become old enough, we teach children to fear things like matches and knives and traffic-filled streets and strange animals and strangers, etc., etc. And that fear can be good because it's for their own safety and well-being. My favorite example of that happened to me about a year or 2 ago when, after I picked up that old Suburban that I have, I was unloading it off the trailer that I brought it back on, and I was parked in the parking lot next to a daycare center. And as I was unloading this truck, I felt like I was being watched. And sure enough, I turn around to the playground at the daycare center, and there's this little boy, fingers through the chain link fence, looking at me. I thought, okay, that probably would have been me, but all right. So I went on with what I was doing, and a few moments later, though, I hear, "Hi." "Hello." So I keep working. "What are you doing?" "Well, just unloading this truck." "Why?" Guess that's a glimpse into my future, huh? Well, because I need to. Now, I'm pretty sure this conversation continued with a few more questions, but all I remember is that as I was looking at this little boy, something must have popped into his head because he got this look of fear on his face, and he quickly looked at me and goes, "Are you a stranger?" He knew he wasn't supposed to be talking to strangers, but he still wasn't quite sure what or who a stranger exactly was. But that's the kind of fear that's designed to keep that little boy safe. And more broadly, though, and as we get older, fear and our response to it can cause an immense amount of damage, even though that we think those actions are actually keeping us safe. Fear will often cause us to turn inward and focus on ourselves, and even go as far as causing us to worship that personal trinity of me, myself, and I. Fear can close us off from seeing and reaching out towards others with a hand of help or justice. Fear can even lead us to violence or injustice towards others whom we think we need to fear. Fear is a very real and legitimate part of our world and our life. And fear also keeps us from doing what Jesus calls us to do. And as we heard in today's gospel reading, it seemed to be keeping the disciples from doing what they were being called to do. I certainly can't imagine why it would hold them or us back by any means. Jesus only goes on to tell us that our body and souls can be destroyed by the one in hell, and that Jesus came to bring a sword to this world and not peace, as we all kind of think he must. Oh, and by following him, we might get set apart against our families, and really we're not worthy of following Jesus when we love our parents or our children, and when we don't carry the cross, or when we refuse to lose our lives. It's not all that scary, right? Well, yeah, it is. We can admit that. We have a lot to fear when it comes to following in those footsteps of Jesus, and when we follow his call to become his disciples. And this little pep talk we hear from him this morning may not be helping much. It may help a little more, though, if we put this story in the context of the bigger story that's going on. I know, what a concept. Because as it often happens with following this lectionary cycle, as we do in our worship services, we're being plopped down into the middle of the story that's happening. So these words that we hear Jesus speaking this morning are actually part of a larger speech that he's giving to his 12 disciples as he's sending them into the world to proclaim this good news. He's already given them the power and authority for all these things. He's instilling that childlike fear in them to keep them safe. And then with all of that, he's now trying to give them the confidence that they need to follow this calling. What calling or what mission are they called to? Well, it's fairly simple. Proclaim the good news that the kingdom of heaven has come near. We've heard that. But maybe it's not that simple, since there's this boatload of other instructions on how to make this proclamation to go along with it. But in the end, the goal of all of this is to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, which is the same as you and I are called to do as his disciples, as his learners and followers. But again, that brings fear. Fear that we might not know what to say, fear that we'll be rejected or disliked for that message we have. Fear we'll lose the things that we've come to want and love and need. So Jesus is trying to give courage to all his disciples through this speech. Not a courage that's naive or careless, that sends us out to be thoughtless and fearless with our words and actions. No, not that. Instead, this is a tough-minded courage, one where you can take a stand, fully knowing and understanding those risks that are involved. We've missed a couple of the nuggets that Jesus has shared already. He says, for instance, be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. And he also says, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for it is not you who is to speak, but it's the Spirit of the Father speaking through you. So those things then lead us, finally, to the part of Jesus' speech that we get in today's gospel. Have no fear of those who hate me, says Jesus. Do not fear those who might persecute or kill you, because they cannot kill your soul. Do not be afraid, because God the Father knows you, down to the hairs on your head, and values you more than any other creature around. Do not fear. So do we have that type of courage? Can we really live this life of discipleship without fear? Because it isn't an easy life. This isn't an easy message to proclaim. And in what often we think as just a totally crazy message, Jesus does speak the truth when he says that I didn't come to bring peace, but I came to bring a sword. We often treat this message that the kingdom of heaven has come near as some happy message that all is now right with the world. What I hate to tell you, my friends, this message is not always happy. It requires some loss and some sacrifice. The old ways, the ways of the world, must go. Jesus came so that those ways could be cut away to make room for this new kingdom. So the popular messages of success and happiness sometimes have to be cut away so that the message of freedom and love and justice have room to grow. Did Jesus then really come to destroy families with his sword? Well, no, I don't think he actually wants households to be against one another. But the reality is, look around you. How many of you here today have family members who think this message of the kingdom, the message of Jesus, is totally bogus? How many of you have family members who you wish would come back to church, but won't because the message that the church offers sounds totally irrelevant to them? This message that Jesus brings is tough. It does cause division and fear. It turns families on one another because of disagreements about its meaning and importance. Yes, this message, this gospel shakes up values. It rearranges priorities. It reorients goals. But do not fear. Because the one who knows how many hairs are on your head, or in some cases how few, but that one loves you and will never leave you alone in this proclamation and in this life of following Jesus. And in giving up one's life in the name of Christ, that is to be given all that makes us free and holy and good. That there is the confidence that Jesus is giving us in this life. Confidence to live through the fear of proclaiming this incredible message of life and love to the world. Confidence to approach the cross in a new way of understanding it. Confidence in a kingdom that is to come. Confidence to deal with the fears of the future of the church. Confidence to face the evils of this world head on, knowing that God can and will prevail against every hurt and every challenge that comes our way. Brothers and sisters, have no fear. Amen.